We're good.
All right. Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's Greg Santos, and welcome to episode 63 of CEO Life. Again, you're the CEO of your life, whether you want to be or not. Today, I have an extremely awesome guest. I met her at a business event out in New York, and she is a hustler. She's a go-getter. She's a podcaster. She is a networker, just overall positive energy. And most of all, what I enjoy about her is that she's very humble as well, and she admits where she may be lacking, and she looks for ways to fill that so she can get better in her life in whatever area she's looking to improve in. So please welcome my guest, Yasmina. Yasmina, thank you for being a guest here on my podcast today.
Hey, Greg, it's an absolute pleasure. I'm really, really excited for our chat.
Cool. So you have a podcast.
I do.
I've seen you just guest after guest after guest, and I'm like,
Yeah, man.
wow. Could you just briefly explain what, like, the Young Entrepreneur's Journey podcast, what's it about?
For sure. So essentially, my original thoughts for this came for various reasons. But, do you want me to talk about what it's about or kind of how I got into it?
Both.
Both. So how I got into it was, so I was looking much more to get into the entrepreneurial space and to connect with a lot more entrepreneurs. And obviously, I'm a huge podcast listener. I'll listen to it on like the train, when I'm doing my laundry, when I'm doing my dishes. You know, like all of the dead space, you know, when you're walking around, you're not really doing anything. And just having clever people have conversations in your ears, and then you learn so much from them. I'd get out my iPhone's notes, and I'd start making notes, and be like, here's this gem, here's that gem, and I'd start applying that in my life. And I was like, wow, podcasts are freaking cool. It's like the closest thing you can have to being a part of a conversation without actually being in a conversation. So just listening to intelligent conversations is one thing that's hugely improved my life, and just taking all of the free value that I can gain from podcasts. And so when I thought that, I want to get more into the entrepreneurial space, I thought I want to connect with more entrepreneurs. How am I going to do that? I'm not really doing much in that space. And so I was like, well, if I go to an event and I'm not really doing anything, or, yeah, I'm a Cambridge student, yeah, I speak a lot of languages, yeah, I got some cool things going on, but if I go up to some person who's like more high level than me and I say, hey, can I take an hour of your time to ask you whatever the hell I want? They'll be like, no, go away. But if I go up to them and I go, hey, I've got this podcast, I'd love to have you on as a guest. And, I interviewed them, and they're like, and I talk about the podcast, and I'm really excited. They're like, oh, yeah, sounds cool. Or I basically do the exact same thing. I take an hour of their time to ask them whatever the hell I want.
Dang,
It's
you
pretty
just
sneaky,
reframe
right?
it.
Pretty sneaky.
Dang, that's dope.
Yeah, and so my thoughts behind it was, well, I want to do it on entrepreneurship and want to connect with entrepreneurs, but that one, it's a very oversaturated market, and two, I'm not an entrepreneur, so I don't really have any authority in that niche. And then I was like, well, I'm young, so I'm a young entrepreneur, I'm a young aspiring entrepreneur, and it's a journey. And so then I called it the Young Entrepreneur's Journey, and I thought it would be great to target it to young people because, one is, I am a young person. I've developed myself in a lot of areas of my life so far, and I still am. And I thought, well, it's such an untapped market, and I feel like you hear a lot of these entrepreneurship podcasts out there, and they're not very raw, or they're quite, filtered, and they're like, yeah, here my business is going great, and there my business is going great, and here, and they're like just like two successful people chatting to each other. But I think it exists, but I haven't seen many people talk about the journey and the raw of what it's really like. And so I've gotten great feedback on that so far, and I think people who are young and they're struggling, because there's so much information out there, a lot of it's like people don't know where to start. There's a lot of scammers as well. So just having a bunch of people on to be like, talk about the mindsets and the habits and the strategies, the routines of how they help themselves personally to excel, kind of like how you do, Greg, the whole CEO life kind of stuff. And then also how they use all these strategies to help their businesses scale. And so I have young people on who are already doing awesome things that really ball in, and they share like the raw parts of their story and all of these, tactics that they use that are quite implementable. And then also, more seasoned or older or more successful and experienced entrepreneurs who just want to inspire the next generation. So I've had a mix of that, and it's been incredibly valuable for me as well. But I've also had a lot of great feedback on it.
Dang. So basically, it started off by you're basically asking questions to see like how can you help yourself out, but not only that, but there's
Yeah.
other people in your space that may have the same questions,
Mm.
and you have people who are a lot more ahead of it than you, like talk about the actual how challenging it can be and what you can expect, but not only that, but also hustlers around your age or around the same, going through the same process as you, and
Mm.
interviewing them, seeing what they're doing and how you can improve in that way as well, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's just the great thing about it, Greg, is that it's just pure value. And I'm not asking for anything. I'm just asking people to listen to it and learn from it to help it grow. And it's useful for me in the sense of like, starting to build a personal brand. It's an incredible social asset. The network that I've made through it is just freaking like wow in the space of such a short time. But like it's just pure value. And it's like if you want to do something, not even just in the entrepreneurial space, but you want to do anything in your life, you just got to start taking some action, and you just got to put yourself in the right places, listen to the right mentors, be clear about your goals, and you just got to go do something. When I was starting this, I was like, I'd had the idea, and then I was like, you know what? Because I'd been procrastinating from entrepreneurial stuff because I had like bullshit excuses in my mind for so long. And you're like, what will these people think of me? Or like, I'm not ready. The I'm not ready thing is a big one. I don't have
Mm-hmm.
time, which is rubbish because you make time if you're efficient with your hours. We all have the same amount of hours in a week. Obama would have like breakfast with his family every morning whilst he was president, and work out every day, and like all of these high
I didn't know
achievers.
that.
Yeah, I think I read that he would make a point of having breakfast with his family every day, despite being the president of the US and having so much on his plate, being like possibly the most busy man in the world potentially.
Dang, that's insane.
And since when you hear about people like that, or like Arnold Schwarzenegger and his workout routines, Muhammad Ali would be up at the gym at like super early in the morning. He wouldn't even start counting his reps until it hurt. Like they wouldn't even count as reps until he was already in pain, and then he would start counting his reps. And then you hear about all of these crazy things, doing all of these amazing things, like you yourself, Greg, like starting to get up at 4 with your accountability calls. Then you're like growing a business, and you've got a job, and finding time for this, and it's rubbish. So just go do something. Now, I was in an internship at the time. I didn't have much time to myself at all, but I was like, I can make a start. So I just ordered a microphone. It's like you just start with a small step. I just went to Amazon and I
Mm.
ordered a microphone. That was the first
Yeah.
step.
So how did you overcome like all that? Like I'm not ready yet, and just that fear, and what finally put you over that hump?
Just thinking about where I want to be going in my life and thinking about the direction that you're going in. I think no matter what situation you're in, like, I mean, especially when you're a young person and you've got so much pressure on you at the age of 20, 21, even 18. And they're like, I think it's kind of crazy how in schools at the age of like 16, I don't know how it is in the US, but in England, it's like from the age of 13, you're already choosing subjects that would influence your university potential, and then you like do one degree. You're not like majoring in a bunch of stuff, but it's like you got to be funneled into one degree. So it's like I study languages, or I study chemistry, or I study physics, history.
Wait, and then would the curriculum be based on what you choose in high
Yeah,
school?
so the way it works in England, I don't know if it's interesting at all, but the way it works in England is you don't apply to a university, you apply to a subject within a university. So I
Okay,
didn't
yeah.
apply to Cambridge, I applied to the languages department in Cambridge, and then I got in as a languages student. And Cambridge and Oxford is kind of different to other universities because you can change if you really don't like your degree, and that's because that's just because they're special unis, whatever. But like usually it's like you just apply to that, so you have all of these restrictive choices, and it becomes more and more restrictive throughout your teenage years. And I think the amount of pressure that you get to put on to decide what you want to do is crazy. So I think thinking about like where do you want your life to go, and like forget all of the outside influences of like what your mom wants, what your friends think, what your teachers think, whoever anything else thinks. I think everyone has to do a real deep dive with themselves to think like, where do I actually want my life to go? And I was seeing my life going in a certain way, and I was like, and all these outside influences putting their own kind of pressures of what they think is best for my life. And when I was like, you know what, I'm not sure I'm okay with the direction in which my life is going, I should actually just do something. And so I just went out and did something. And it all starts with the small steps. So whatever project you're thinking of working on, whatever thing you're thinking of doing, if it's a side hustle thing, if it's a uni thing, whatever it is, just think like, what is my first step? And then at everything you do, like every point you are in, don't get caught up in like the it's important to have a macro vision in mind, but don't get caught up in that. Always think, what is my next step? And I think I was listening to one of Oprah's audiobooks, Oprah Winfrey, and I think she would always do that in her journal. She'd write, what is my next step? And then she'd just do that next step.
Wow.
And she basically next stepped her way to media mogul billionaire. So if she can do it, so can you.
Dang, that's so awesome. You know, that just reminds me of I took a boot camp with Derek, and I was talking about these big goals I have for myself, and he basically said, wipe your ass with all that grandiose thinking, just execute on what's in front of you. Like, what are the next things you have to do to move you forward?
100%. It's so important.
Yeah, so, and execution is it's everything. It's everything. And like, it's all about taking just little actions every single day to help you get to the next level. I talk about it all the time. Like, it's the compound effect. But okay, so what was the next steps for you? You ordered the mic, and then you're like, okay, I have this idea. What happens after that?
Well, the thing is, when I got into that I did have a podcast, I didn't know anything about podcast. I knew about podcasts because I'd listened to podcasts, but I didn't know anything about like how to run a podcast. I like, what is going on, like platforms. I don't even know, man. I had no idea what was going on. I mean, actually, before I get into that, an interesting thing to pull out is like what you were saying. I just like to comment on what you're saying about execution, because that really is the key. And the only times in my life where I've really seen a material change is when I've executed on things. And, you know, anyone can have an idea. I can come up with 20 million ideas. Like I could come up with, 20 ideas in the next 20 seconds on some random topic. And some of them are going to be terrible, and one or two of them might be quite good. But if it just stays an idea in my head, then nothing's going to come out of it. And actually, one powerful thing that I did is like, like whatever you're doing, whatever you're thinking, get into, just have a project, like just talk about your ideas, tell people the things that you want to do, because if you don't tell anyone and it stays a secret in your mind, then the people that might be excited about that, or the people that could even help you with that, they're not going to know about it. And you're also not going to get feedback on it. You're not going to see whether there are ways which you can improve it, or maybe it's not even a good idea. You don't know that until you go out and you really just put yourself out there and talk to people. And it's even with this podcast, when I had this idea for it, I was, trying to get more interviews and stuff, and like seeing like who could I maybe interview. So I was like, kind of when I'm thinking about next steps. So I ordered the microphone, and I'm like, okay, I've got a microphone. I don't know how to use a microphone. So I go onto YouTube and I'm like, well, how do I use this microphone? And then I like download the audio program, and then I literally make a list of like, well, I'm looking for people to interview. Who are the people that I know in my network who I could potentially interview? And I came up with like, I don't know, 3 people. And I was like, this is disappointing. I was like, this is depressing. I was like, well, I need to get my arse out to some entrepreneurial events and meet some more entrepreneurs. So that's what I did. And at the time, there weren't even any, like, there wasn't a podcast, there were no interviews. I hadn't figured out the whole platform hosting thing yet, but I just had this idea, and I knew that it was something that I was going to do. And so I went up to the events, and I literally just started chatting to people, and they were like, oh, hey, you, what's your story? Da, 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 da. And I just start rambling, like, in a really excited manner about my podcast. And they'd be like, and nothing existed yet. There was no online presence. There was nothing. They were like, oh my God, that sounds really cool. Yeah, I really like that. Oh yeah, let's connect. Da, 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 da. I didn't even have a podcast at that time. It was just something that I was working towards. And I think the powerful thing to take away from that is like, even if you haven't done the thing yet, going out and talking to ideas, like the things that you're excited about with people connect with that. People get really excited about that. People want to talk to you. I think often people fall into the trap of watering themselves down and to please people, or they're not sure, they're like, oh, people might judge me, people might think I'm weird. Just talk about whatever you're excited about. I don't care if it's collecting crickets. Like, if you're excited about something, that's something that's gonna transfer over to other people, and then like just having an idea of talking about it, and you never know who you might meet. You might meet your next co-founder that way. I met some interview guests that way. Like, the relationships that I built through that is amazing, and it's just been an absolute upward spiral. It's been a huge upward spiral for me.
Yeah, I can see that. The quality of guests that you're having, the people, you're around the right people too, like people who are really executing, people who are doing something with their lives. I mean, I look at your Instagram and I'm inspired. And truthfully, I'm looking at it like, and I'm inspired because I can see what's possible. It's like, and it seems like it's not even difficult to get people onto your podcast. People are like thrilled to be on it.
I was shocked.
You've had, so you have such a powerful platform. And I know one thing that so there's a few things you touched on. Now, one thing that is extremely important is the ability to talk to people and network. That is probably one of the most important skills you can possibly have. And I know that you specifically want to help people who are entrepreneurs become better networkers and better communicators. So, and I know that just as far as socially, that has actually been a really big thing in your life, as far as something you've had to overcome in your past. So, like, could you explain a little bit about where you come from? Like, how were you socially before? Like, how did you work on yourself to become better at it? And why was it so important for you to become a better communicator?
Happy to talk to you about that. For sure. So as a kid, I was a very shy kid. I was very timid. I was the child in class who would always be scared to put up her hand, and I'd always get those reports from the teachers who'd be like, oh, Yasmina, she's such a bright student. She's so such an intelligent student. She's very quiet. Maybe she could speak up more in class. So I was that kind of kid. I was like the quiet nerd kid, rather than spending time with, like the popular kids with their fake orange foundation and their Prada bags or whatever. Or even just general people. There was a lot of people, there were a lot of girls like that in my school. It was quite funny. It was quite funny. And I mean, despite that, I still felt like I felt like an outsider, and I just sit in the library on the beanbag, read books. And I did not have good social skills. I'm a very empathetic person, and I was very sensitive, and I was quite negative at the time because I wasn't super excited about my life, and I didn't know a huge amount about the social matrix, about how to engage with people. And so I think when I was in sort of my mid-teens, it was a big pain point for me. And people are more motivated by pain than they are by pleasure. You'll see this in your own life. There's countless examples. It's like, you look at the weight loss stories out there, and someone's like hugely, you're much more likely to be in such an awful situation that you're like, fuck this, I need to do something about it, than if like everything's going great and you're like, oh, it could be better. Like, if something's really shit, you're going to do something about it. So I was like, well, my social skills suck. What can I do about it? So I turned to my best friend Google, and I literally typed in stuff like how to get good social skills, or like how to have charisma, da 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 da. And and I started just listening to podcasts, like reading blogs, watching YouTube videos. Charisma on Command's quite big. I watched them from over 6 years ago. It's like a podcast called The Art of Charm, which is funny because I think it was even for men, but I was like, I don't care. I want to learn social skills too. I don't care what the target market is. And so I just started absorbing that content, like absorbing. And I think you can get, when it comes to content, it can be very easy to fall into a loop of absorption and note-taking without implementing, which is something that I've done at various stages of my life. And it's like, you always need to remember the execution part, right? But slowly over the course of time, just instilling those thoughts in my head, and then actually like fixing my confidence, fixing the way in which I communicate my value and in which I engage with people, slowly but surely over several years. I'm still working on it. It's very good now. Everything can always get better, but it got way better, always better. you learn the lessons, you're like, okay, I failed here, how can I improve that? And then you're like, okay, maybe I can get better at this part of communication, like rapport building, or like being engaging, or communicating your value, or being joyous or funny, or whatever. You work on all these different parts. How do I network with high net worth people? Da, 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 da. And it all just goes into an upward spiral, right? And yeah, it's gotten to an incredible stage. And that's just through the commitment.
Excellent. Okay, so before the podcast, I was doing some research on your Instagram. I saw that you are pretty proficient at playing the piano.
I am.
Now I'm gonna relate something really quick.
Yeah,
so
I do.
I used to train jujitsu, and
Seriously?
when I would do jujitsu,
Nice.
Jujitsu did was it helped me relate to other things in the world. It helped me really have a good understanding with how the learning process is, and just what to expect when you're working on something. So what are some lessons that you've taken, did learning piano shape the way you look at things that helped you become a better communicator? Does that make sense?
I understand what you're getting at here. I think a lot of people might be like, what on earth is he talking about? But I understand what you're getting at for sure. Because you're talking about skill building and skill learning, right? So you're talking about how did the practice and the discipline of learning something like piano or jujitsu translate into social skills?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the question. Yeah, I mean, I think it did. It never consciously did. I think for me, it was something that I was so committed to fixing it that I was going to fix it no matter what. But that's a very good point. If you're someone who has successfully learned a skill, whether it's an instrument or a language or a sport or a discipline really well, if you're someone who's learned that successfully, you can learn something like fitness, you can learn something like social skills, because at the end of the day, it's all a skill. We're all born babies, right? We all come into the world, yes, different, but also the same. And we have a lot of traits that are different, whether it's, genetic traits, personality, whatever, appearance. But at the end of the day, it's all programming. And you can program your brain in any way. So you can program your brain with the right execution, the right mentors, the right discipline to be a great saxophone player, or to be a great physicist, or to be a great programmer, or Krav Maga person, like trainer. But it's like, yeah, you're more likely to be apt at some other things, and it's probably better to focus on the skill sets that you're more naturally apt at. But at the end of the day, with the right execution, the right mentors, anything can be trained.
Most definitely. Yeah. That's what I was working to get at. Because with jujitsu, it's like, okay, this is a very slow process. And what it takes is just the discipline to show up day in and day out. Even if you suck, that's okay. Yeah. But at least you showed up. You just keep going. And the thing is, initially, you're not going to see any results. Especially with jujitsu, you spend a lot of time getting strangled. Your arm and your limbs are getting manipulated into ways that you've never experienced before.
Yep.
And for many, many, many months, I feel like I've made zero progress. But over time, and you keep showing up, you start to reflect on where you used to be. You're like, wow, I can now see the payoff of all those days where I tapped out, where I got strangled, and whatever it is. Now I can see why all that was so important. Now I'm a lot better where I am now. So what was tell us a couple stories, or maybe a story that stands out where you were learning to become better socially, and what was your process like when you would go out and try to meet somebody new? Because I know that wasn't beautiful. I know it was nerve-wracking because I was there myself. But what did that look like for you?
Well, it's interesting. It's something where you progress so slowly that you can't always immediately see the change. Sometimes something clicks and you're like, oh, wow, I feel amazing from one day to the next. But a lot of it's just like, you got to fail forward. You're never going to get success without any failures. I can't think of any kind of biography I've read or anything I've read about any kind of entrepreneur or successful business person, or like, you know, like in jiu-jitsu, you got to get choked a million times. Like you're never gonna get anywhere if you don't fail. So you've got to actively seek opportunities to do things and then not be afraid to fail, and then you're going to go get successes. So I mean, I'm casting my mind back a long time here, but I think the first thing that I really had to fix was my confidence. And actually, I think that's one of the things that is interesting when it comes to people teaching social skills, because often what they will do is they will focus on the tricks and the tactics. They'll be like, you know, like sentence patterns, or how to sort of like inject humor into a conversation. Like, you know, it would be something that's like a tip and a trick, or like this trick to make you feel better. Da 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 da. That's a good part, and that's an important part, and that's something that I'd kind of read up along on in the very beginning. But what I noticed over time is that you need to fix the inner first before you fix any of the outer stuff. If you're not confident about your life, you're not happy about your life, you're not like seeing the path forward in the direction that you're going, and you feel kind of bad about yourself, that's going to translate across all social situations and everyone you interact with ever. And so honestly, it's like 80% of it is laying the inner groundwork of your confidence, understanding who you are, being able to screen properly for the right people, and just feeling ballin' about your life, and like knowing the direction that you're going in, and then being able to communicate that value effectively, and you know, your excitement about things effectively. And then the last 20% is like the tricks and the tactics and stuff. So I mean, I can't think of any specific stories off the top of my head, but
Okay.
yeah.
I would love to have hear some of that. Like you know, back when I first started learning how to become more socially skilled, I would go to, you know, nightclubs in my city, you know, by myself, and I remember they would put like highlight reels of them in a club and what they said, and like if something works, right? And I'm like, oh, I'm gonna try that out. So one thing specifically was I remember it was my very first night in a nightclub by myself.
Yeah.
And I remember on YouTube, I saw the instructor go up to this girl, and he put his hand around her and said, "Introduce yourself to me." And she was receptive to it.
I love it.
So
yeah.
I'm like, oh, that's what works.
Yeah.
So it can, right?
Yeah.
So I went up, and there was this group of girls, and this girl's back is towards me, and I just went up to her, and I put my hand on her waist, and I was like, "Hey, introduce yourself to me." And then she looked at me with like so much horror.
Oh man.
And I'm like, what? Why is she looking at me like that? I have plenty of stories.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was just interested to see if you had any that came off, you know, the top of your head.
Yeah, you know, I got to think on that one. I mean, I've definitely been in a lot of like social gaff, embarrassing situations, but my social skills have been quite good for a while, and when I was doing it, I was a lot younger. So I mean, for me, it would just be talking to people at school or out and about. Is kind of like, and you know, working on it more specifically, like recently, is like I'm already quite good at it, so I haven't thought of any like specifically bad gaffes. But like, I mean, on like that's one thing that people get freaked out about, whether it's approaching anyone, where it's like someone they're interested in, like romantically, or if it's someone like high status, or someone they're looking to do business with, whatever it is. People are like, oh my god, how to approach, like, it's like, and they're like, you get in your head, and you're like, it's like, no, just be chill about it. Like, you can say whatever you want, honestly. Like, I don't know if you've heard of the Handmaiden's Tale, which is, it's this book by Margaret Atwood, and it's also this TV series, and it's crazy dark. It's like, people think Game of Thrones is messed up, and then you see that, and you're like, woof.
Really?
But yeah, it takes place in this sort of dystopian, sort of Christian America, where America's been turned to this crazy, anyway, look it up. I'm not going to go into the story, but in this kind of fictional world, they'll you know, talk to each other being like, blessed be the fruit, and then the response will be like, may the Lord open, and that'll be like the greeting, or like blessed day, and then the goodbye would be under his eye. And I'm literally thinking, like, you could say whatever you could go up to someone, say, hey, you look cool. I thought you'd be interesting to talk to. I'm Yasmina. You were like, oh, hi, I'm Greg. You literally walk up to say, oh, hi, I'm Greg. Or like, hey, I wanted to come. You look bored, so I thought I'd brighten up your day. You're like, whatever. You could also walk up and say, blessed be the fruit. You know, I'm not even joking. I had this thought yesterday, and I
Right.
was like, I haven't done it yet, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to walk up to some people in, like, events or whatever. I'm just going to say, blessed be the fruit, because I think it's going to be quite funny. If someone's watched The Handmaid's Tale, they might even
Yeah.
reply with, may the Lord open. If they're not, they're like, what? But it's just, you just got to come over that initial barrier, and just say the first thing that comes to mind. Just whatever comes to mind, just say it. And you've already crossed the barrier, so now you can continue the conversation like normal human beings.
Nice. Yeah, it's a nice little icebreaker. It's a good way to, connect and you're dealing with the specific niche. And it's like it's out of the ordinary. I can
Just say what you
see
want, yeah.
them being like, what? And then you just
You're
like,
like,
and if
what?
you're able to, and I have the confidence you're
Yeah.
able to recover from that, laugh like, oh my bad, I thought whatever it is.
Not even, you
Um,
know what you can do? Like, because I think the key is when you're meeting people is to talk about stuff you're excited about. And one common mistake that is made is like, people are always like, people read things like Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. And then they're all like, oh, like, oh, I need to ask questions, be interested to be interesting, da 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 da. Yes, but if you're doing that from the very beginning and then you come off like some random, like weird police interrogator, it's not going to go well. And in the first few minutes of an interaction, they don't know who you are yet. They don't trust you because they don't have a sense of who you are. So what I do is I walk up, I'll introduce myself, and then I'll start rambling about the stuff that I'm excited about. Maybe do it like a question here, a question there. But I'm usually doing most of the talking in the first few minutes of an interaction. So in that kind of context, if I would, because recently I got really excited about this book because it's just messed up and I think it's really interesting. And so if I go blessed be the fruit and they're like, huh? I'd be like, oh, what? You haven't heard of The Handmaid's Tale? Cue 5 minute excited passionate rant about The Handmaid's Tale, and then they're like, oh my god, here's this person, they're excited about things, and then they'll start talking to me and it'll be like a conversation.
yeah.
It'll be good. Because I mean, just people think like, oh, go up like, what do I say in a conversation? It's like, I just talk about the stuff that I'm excited about, like the stuff that I'm up to, stuff that I'm passionate about, whatever stuff that I've been thinking about. It doesn't need to be complicated.
You make a great point. Yeah, what's really like with communication, it's 7% words. So what's most important is that how you say it
Mm.
and the energy that's backed by it. And people want to be around positive energy.
Yeah, they
At
really
least the
do.
right people do. And when you have that, when you're giving that off, a sense of creepiness or like offness or weirdness, and you're offering just so much positive energy, like this person is going to want to interact with you a
Mm.
lot more.
Exactly.
So one thing that I've also saw on your Instagram is you've
Mm.
also done improv.
I
So
have. Yeah,
improv is amazing. I've done a little bit myself, but I don't want
it's
to talk too much
crazy, isn't
about
it?
my
Yeah,
experience. But it's so much fun. How do
it
you
is.
feel that improv has helped you become like a better communicator?
Okay, so funny story. I've done quite a bit of improv in the past year, and before that I'd done a little bit. But last year I lived in Paris for 5 months. And at that time I was already thinking about improv, and I was like, I've done some improv in the past, but I want to do more improv. I was living in Paris and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do improv in French. I was like, yeah, and honestly, that was the best thing I've ever done for my French. I did improv comedy in French. So I mean, just from a context of,
Oh,
so improv is already something that puts you out of your comfort zone. I think improv is good for everyone to do, especially if you're one of these kinds of people that get stuck in your head. Um, Improv is one of those things that really brings you into the present moment, and it really hones you into other people. And especially in a conversational context, often people get stuck into the loop of thinking, oh, what do I say next? Oh yeah. And then they're like thinking, they're like pre-planning what they're going to say, like this funny thing, like this next story. That brings you out of the moment. Then you're not actually listening to the other person. You're not actually engaging with their point of view or engaged in the conversation. With improv, when you're on a stage in front of several people and you're building a scene with either one or more scene partners, and it's got to be a good experience, and you're creating it out of thin air, you're like pulling it out of your ass basically, and it's got to be interesting as well. There's lots of facets that go into it, but fundamentally if you're not paying attention, the scene's not going to go well because it's not going to make any sense. And then from like a social pressure situation, I think it's always good to put yourself in situations of social pressure because it kind of trains your confidence, it trains your negotiation skills, it puts you out of your comfort zone, blah, 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 blah. So in the context of doing that in French, which is a foreign language, and I was already quite proficient at French, but by no means fluent. I mean, I was kind of fluent, but I wasn't like, it's nowhere near like my English, right? And so to like be put on a stage, like to literally actively go out and seek that situation where like I'm gonna put myself on a stage with fluent French people in front of several French people, and I'm gonna like there'll be those moments where it's like I'm in a scene with one other person, there's no one else to fall back on, and they'll have just gone on like some really big French rant, like in slang French about some crazy stuff, and I'm just like and just like having to come out of that and like being like, oh, I only understood like 20% of what you said. Now I've got to offer something else and make it entertaining at the same time. It's just like, whoa.
Whoa, dang. And real quick, improv is hard by itself in English, in a language you're proficient in. That's tremendous courage right there.
I'm a crazy person, but that's the thing. Like, I think everyone should during their day actively seek to put themselves in uncomfortable situations because the magic always happens outside of the comfort zone. It's always that's where all growth comes from. It's always by putting yourself out there and you learn something. And I think in a context of putting your ego aside, that's really key because a lot of people like your ego only exists to tell you that you're amazing already and that everything you're doing is already fantastic and you don't need to do anything more. But if you're actually looking to improve in an area of your life, whatever it is, and get results, then you actually need to have the humility to, put that aside, take on whatever feedback there is. And so kind of if you put yourself in a situation like that on a stage in a foreign language, making up scenes that's supposed to be funny, where you might fail, yeah, your ego might get hurt sometimes when they don't laugh. Oh, that wasn't funny. Or like, who's a stupid English person? Like, her French is bad, whatever. Like, they didn't even think that. They thought my French was good. But, negative self-talk is another thing. And another thing to keep in mind is often your perception of yourself is not the way in which other people perceive you. Whether yours is more negative or more positive. That's always something interesting to think about.
Dang. Yeah, 100%. So are you still actively doing improv? Like, well, nowadays, what are you doing to help people become... Are you working towards helping people become better communicators right now? I know that's something you want to work on, you want to do, especially entrepreneurs.
So that's something that, because I've been thinking about where can I best add value and what can I do to really help people. And so I have this podcast. I've developed myself a huge amount against, in my mindset, my habits, whatever, kind of like the stuff you're doing, goals, whatever. But then I noticed that and I'm also very proficient in several languages, so I can teach languages very easily. So I was thinking of a lot of different things, but then I thought the social skills thing would make a lot of sense because of my story and because of where I've come from. And then just the fact that, within 2 months, having basically no network or like a very average human's network from writing down, who could I interview for this podcast? And having like maybe 3 potential people who are like, 3 potential people are like, yeah, no, like cool enough people, but you don't really know. And then to having like several multimillionaires on my Rolodex within my various contacts or apps or whatever in the space of 2 months, I think was like, wow, like I actually achieved something in that area.
That's incredible.
I've just been like riding the wave, honestly, but thinking about, especially when you're an entrepreneur and you want to network with the right people, you want to get funding from investors, you want to put yourself in the right places. It's like, yeah, go to the right places, be in the right rooms. But when you're in those rooms, how are you going to know that you can make the right impression? How can you get the right people excited about you and excited about the stuff that you're doing? And that's something that I've done very well, kind of subconsciously. But looking back, I know how I did that, but I didn't notice it at the time. And so I think that's an area where I can offer a huge amount of value.
Okay. So this week, I'm leaving today. I'm going to Colorado. I'm going to a business event. And it's about how to get more how to grow your business using stages. And
Interesting.
in this event, it's going to be it's going to be a small group of people because it's like in a specific network of people who pay like this membership for to have access to these connections. It's called War Room.
Nice.
And thankfully, like my brother-in-law, he's part of it, and he's going to have me as a guest. And
Awesome.
these are actually really successful business people. I mean, you have to. One of the qualifiers is your business has to bring in at least $1 million a year
No way.
to even be part of the group
Dude,
as a
okay.
qualifier.
That's awesome.
So, what would be some advice you would give to me as far as connecting with these people to have them in my Rolodex so I could, help them out in some way, but also where I could have this connection to where they'd be more than happy to help me out too.
For sure, yeah. I mean, I think you're already quite good at this. But the first things I would say in general, if you're putting yourself in a situation like that, is like very clearly understand what your value proposition is. When you're going and you're talking to different people, especially when they're high net worth, like just really understanding your value proposition and like wondering like how you can help these people, and whatever it is, even if it's the smallest things. And sometimes your value isn't even from the things that you can do, but it's from the way that you are. So one of the things that I've noticed, one of the things that I'm very good at, is I'm a very positive person. And in most conversations that I have with people, I'm putting out very good energy and very good vibes. And just through my excitement and my positivity and kind of through that kind of stuff, people are like, wow, I want to continue talking to this person because they're so excited about it. And I mean, in a context of a group of very high net worth individuals, especially when you're asking for their time, for them, their time is the most valuable, it's the most precious thing. If you're going to approach someone like that, the best way to do it is like, you know this already, Greg, but I'm going to say it for the podcast listeners, like,
Please.
say, I know you're busy, like, very like strong, confident, downward tone, like, I know you're busy. And then like, if you're like bullet point, bullet point, bullet point, bullet point, is there any way that you could point me in the right direction? Or is there anyone who could help point me in the right direction? And you're not asking for it. And I think especially when you're engaging with people like this, this is the biggest turnoff for anyone, right? Is neediness. And like, you feel it as well when someone wants something from you, when someone needs something from you, like there's like this little leech, and you just want to like peel them off and throw them back into the ocean. And like it's like every attractive woman has dealt with this. It's like, there's like this creepy guy that's like hovering around. It's like, oh, like he wants something from me, and like you want to be far, far away. You want to be like on the opposite side of the world from this creature. And I think that the mistake a lot of people have when they go into these interactions is that they come from it with a frame of neediness and wanting something. And if you're just the kind of person who's just like, nope, I'm here to give value, whether that value is something that I can help with them with, like some positive vibes and some great conversation, I'm not really asking for anything, I don't really care what they think of me. That's a dangerous thing as well. People are like, when I start telling people like, oh, I don't really care what people think of me, I'm kind of screening to see if they're a good fit and we should spend more time together. But it's like people then start being like too polarizing, and they start saying like these crazy things that they don't even mean. It's like, just like what I mean by that is like really understand who you are and understand like what are the opinions that you have, what are your values, what are your goals, where do you want to go, what matters to you, and then just express that in every conversation. Like inject as much personality that you have as possible. And some of these millionaires might not want to chat with you, and that's fine because there are more. It's like, that's the thing, when you've got scarcity mentality, that's where the need comes from, where it's like, oh, I need something from this particular person because if it doesn't work out with this person, then I'm screwed and nothing's gonna work ever. It's like, no, there's always gonna be more people, and even if you don't think that, you need to have that thought at the back of your mind, because if you're trying to make it work, it's never going to work.
Most definitely. Yeah. You expressed a lot of inner work in there, which is knowing your values. Like, what do you value? What do you like? And actually take the time to write that down and to really like hone that in, and also knowing what you want. There's a lot of people. And, I'm not saying that I'm exempt from this. There's been times in my life and my story is coming from not knowing what I want,
Yeah.
and it's just taking the time to be extremely clear on who you are and what you want out of life, what kind of people you want in your life.
Totally.
And when you have that inner work done already, it takes away a lot of anxiety, social anxiety, because you're like, now you're able to filter people out. It's, like whether this person doesn't want to give you their time or not, it doesn't really have, like, you interpret it like, oh, it doesn't have any kind of effect on who I am as a person. I'm still happy with who I am. I don't even know this person. They don't know me.
Yeah.
Their opinion has no effect on my inner value.
Yeah.
So, that's one thing I really wanted to make sure that connection was made.
Yeah.
Now, I want to get to know a little bit more about you. So I have a few questions. Okay, it's a little rapid fire. Something fun I took from another podcast.
I like it.
So what is your favorite animal?
So I mean, I would love to be that kind of person who says, I don't have a favorite animal, all animals are equal, whatever. But I'm gonna be like a stereotypical person here, and it's just like, I love cats. I have 2 cats. I think cats are goddesses. They're so fluffy. They're so cute. I honestly, like, the Egyptians worshipped them at some time, and they haven't forgotten that. I like lots of different animals, but cats are my favorite. Probably a bias of having grown up with them. But I like plenty of animals. Like, when I go and visit an animal sanctuary, I chill with the cows and the pigs, and I'm like, what a beautiful creatures. I love animals.
So, like, give me 3 adjectives to describe a cat.
Bossy. Actually, not even bossy. I'd say entitled. Affectionate. People would be surprised, but my cats are super affectionate. And just fucking hilarious. They're just hilarious. They're just so funny.
Yeah, they are, right?
They're just so funny. Yeah.
Okay. And what's your favorite article of clothing?
I really like jackets. I'm a huge jacket person. I've got a shiny silver jacket. I've got like furry red jacket, like black jacket, everything. Actually, this is another interesting thing to touch on in terms of conversation. And so and kind of like not really caring and just like understanding who you are and your values and understanding what you find funny. So the reason I like The Handmaid's Tale is it's really dark, and I just love dark things. I don't know what it is that I love about it, but I just love dark things. And so
yeah, I love
I'm going to
excitedly
excitedly talk about that, right? And so in the context of my coats, I have a lot of quite fluffy coats or furry coats, and then people will come up to me and they'll like start stroking my arm, like, oh my god, it's so furry, oh my god, it's so warm. And then I'll be like, oh yeah, it's the grizzly bear I killed with my bare hands. Or like my red coat, I'll have different ones. I'll be like, oh yeah, it's the parrots that I killed. And I just find it really funny because I'm a vegan, and I'll even say that. So This is something like, if someone like this is another thing. It's like, I'm a vegan and I don't care. Like, I'm gonna mention it, and if someone has something to say about it, I don't really care. And then I'll literally say, I'll be like, oh yeah, it's the bear, it's the grizzly bear that I killed. Yeah, I find that stuff really funny, especially because I'm a vegan. I'll literally say that, and I just won't care. And especially when people say, like, oh, I'm literally saying this is the kind of stuff that I find funny. This is a part of my personality. This is a part of my values, and I don't care about it. And they're like, oh, interesting. And it's already a more interesting conversation than, what do you do for a living?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
I'm a huge coat girl.
So give me 3 adjectives about jackets.
Jackets.
Like your favorite jacket. Give me 3 adjectives on your favorite jacket.
Red, fluffy, warm.
Okay. Red, fluffy, and warm.
Right here, if you're on video. It's right here.
Okay.
Another thing I'll say is it looks like I've just come out of the Tomatina, which is the Spanish festival where they throw tomatoes at each other for no apparent reason.
That's funny. I had no idea about that.
Yeah, look it up. The Tomatina. La Tomatina. It's quite funny.
So what would be another adjective besides red?
What? Sorry?
Describe it another way besides the color.
Of red? Of the jacket? Yeah. Fluffy and warm.
Fluffy, warm. One more.
One more. It's, I don't know, wintry. I don't know. Wintry, that's what's came to mind. It's not a good adjective. Right. Fashionable.
Last one. Fashionable. Okay, awesome. And last one would be, what's your favorite body of water?
Oh, I know where this question is going. Um, I don't know, a lake. A waterfall. A waterfall. Standing behind a
Okay.
waterfall. Oh, yeah.
Okay. And three adjectives about a waterfall.
Okay. Cold, exhilarating, and powerful.
Okay.
I know where
Awesome. So
this
you
is
know,
going. This is gonna be hilarious. Okay, go on.
okay.
Go
So you know
on.
all three.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah. Yes, yes. So you know it's a test that Sigmund Freud came up with to reveal a person's psyche.
Yeah.
And yeah, so basically what the favorite animal is how you see yourself.
Yeah.
So you chose cat. So you said entitled slash bossy, affectionate, and hilarious.
I'm very
Okay, I
funny.
see that. Yeah,
Mm,
most definitely.
yeah.
The second one is clothing. So you said your jacket is fluffy. Oh, the second one is clothing is how other people see you, which is
Oh
warm,
man.
fashionate, and fluffy.
Fashionable, yeah.
And then the last one is how you view sex. So your favorite body of water. So it's cold, exhilarating, and powerful.
Yep. Love my sex with some extra ice cubes, Kinky.
Just cold, cold as
Oh
ice,
man.
like in meat freezers and shit.
Yep.
Um, cool. Well, hey,
That was
Yasmina,
funny.
thank you so much for hopping on the podcast again.
Thank
We
you,
had some
Greg.
technical difficulties with the first one, but we got this one all squared away.
Hopefully. Yeah, fingers
Where
crossed.
where can my people find you?
People can find me on Instagram at Yasmina RTE. I also have a Facebook page that's just called Yasmina Ellens. But I'm most active on Instagram. And yep, I've got my podcast. It's on Spotify. It's on iTunes. It's called The Young Entrepreneur's Journey with a apostrophe S on entrepreneurs. And yeah, I mean, if anyone is curious or interested about the whole social skills thing for entrepreneurs, hit me up because I'm interested in working in that space right now. And yeah, love to chat, love to connect.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Keep hustling.
Thank you, Greg.
You are, man, you're killing it. So it was great to have you on the podcast.
I
Have a
appreciate
great
that.
day, Yasmina. Thank you.
You too.